questions at the end, but only for attorneys. Family will not take questions. So, can you give us those phones again just one more time? Sorry. Yeah. Yes. Appreciate it. Sure. Okay, you will first hear from Antonio Romanucci, Antonio Romanucci. He is one of the founding partners of the law firm of Romanucci and Blandon. Senior Attorney Maura White, Maurawhite. Senior Paralegal Dana Condos, Danakondos. We expect that Mom Yolanda Rivera will speak, YolandA Rivera, followed by stepfather Rico Thompson, RicoThompson. And following those formal remarks, we will take questions, but only for attorneys. Thank you. My pleasure. Pull it out. Big group. The other one.
Rico, Rico, you want to stay right here. Good one. Sit.
Just a few more slides on our side.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. We appreciate the wide support, not only from the press, but also, as you can see, from the family of Krystal Rivera and her mother and Rico, her stepdad. We appreciate you being here and thank you. We're here because something isn't right about the death and the claimed homicide of Krystal Rivera. It does not yet pass the smell test and the narrative that we are hearing from the Chicago Police Department. We have many questions that need to be answered, and we don't yet trust the narrative that Officer Rivera was shot and killed by her partner during a pursuit of suspects who never fired a shot. We need a lot of answers. And so today is going to take me a little bit longer than typical in a news conference because we're going to break this out into three sections of what we know, of what we want to know, and then what this means. So first, I'd like to acknowledge Krystal's mother. Yolanda Rivera, who represents Krystal's estate and is our client. And her husband, Rico Thompson, is Krystal's stepfather, and other family and friends that are here as well. You will notice that Krystal's young daughter is not here. And even though the child has been named and seen in news coverage related to her mother's funeral, we would ask that the Chicago media please not use her name in any printed publications, not mention her, and please leave her out of the public, and certainly not use any photos of her in any of your coverage going forward. She is a child, and we are asking that you please respect her privacy. So now, with the 36-year-old single mother and officer now laid to rest, what the grieving family deserves is full transparency and a thorough and independent investigation and answers for accountability. However, now that the funeral is over, CPD's loyalty seems to have shifted with the officer who fired the deadly shots and not with Officer Rivera. So we ask, who here is the victim? The shooter or the dead Krystal Rivera? We do not and we will not accept being pushed to the side with the continued narrative that this is a tragedy and be distracted by this being a tragedy and not having the questions answered that we want answered. We know that CPD, we want them to come forward and tell us what happened. So now we get into the three-part phase of today. Here's what we know. The officer involved in the shooting was hired in December of 2021, and his disciplinary record already included 6 complaints. One extremely concerning one just came a few weeks into his probation, and you can see details of that in the June 27th article that was just published in the Chicago Sun-Times. And I believe we have our reporter here today. In 2022, reports indicate that this officer flashed a gun under his waistband to a woman he had been talking to while she was on a date with another man. There is a CPD record of a domestic violence complaint that was never pursued. Following that, there are 5 other reports of complaints against him in his short tenure with the force. Now, domestic violence, or DV, is a death sentence for a police officer under the Lautenberg Act. It requires them to surrender their badges and their gun. It is a career-ending prohibition on firearm possession with a domestic violence conviction, and that can be a misdemeanor or a felony. It makes it fundamentally incompatible for anyone to be a police officer under the Lautenberg Act if they are convicted of a domestic violence act. COPA is said to be investigating the June 5th tragedy, and that's fine. But COPA, as we know, is administrative, and we have no confirmation that they are reviewing this for criminal activity, nor is it objective for Chicago Police Department to be investigating one of its own. Now, we heard some of the dispatch audio from June 5th, the call that an officer was shot, and understand from CPD statements that only one shot was fired in the incident, and that came from the other officer's weapon. We hear this officer calling out during the dispatch that shots are fired at police. He doesn't mention where the shots were fired from, and certainly he does not say that he is the shooter. He also struggles to describe the suspects they are pursuing. He struggles to provide the location of this wounded officer to dispatch. Officer Rivera, from what we know, was shot once. She died of a gunshot wound to the back. The implications of Krystal being shot in the back is magnanimous when you understand that the suspects, as we understand it, were in front of the shooter or at best to the side, and Krystal was behind the shooter. Think about that. Have we heard any discussion about this yet? We have not. Now, Chicago Police Department showed some of that body cam footage to the family, and they showed it to them within days of the incident while the family was still very, very deep in grief. They weren't being represented at that time. They had no attorneys with them. This was well before the funeral. Now, our clients are not experts in policing, even though they had a daughter who was a police officer. And they left that meeting with way more questions than any answers that were given, because all they were allowed to do was just watch the video. On June 27th, which was just this past Friday, our office sent, and Superintendent Snelling did receive, a letter from us. It was a personal letter asking him directly for an independent investigation by the Illinois State Police and for the release of all body cam footage from June 5th, and for the superintendent to address any and all questions from the media. The response that we received was nothing. We have not heard anything. In order to ensure fair and unbiased review of this officer-involved shooting and death, we believe that multiple agencies must collaborate. This cannot just rest within the city of Chicago or any one of its controlled departments. That we would find reprehensible. Here are some of the questions that need answering. We need to know what happened in that incident on June 5th. We need to see the footage. We need to understand where both officers were positioned, where other people who were involved, where they were positioned. What was the angle of the shot fired? What was the timing of events? We need to understand if this officer lacked at that moment, or had, I should say, situational awareness. Did he know where his partner was when he fired the shot? Release the body cam footage, any audio files to provide transparency on this deadly incident. Indeed, we do need to know all of the tactical decisions that were made. We need to know at any time where any of the body cam footage of any of the officers who were there at the time of the shooting or afterwards were turned off or obscured in any way. Release the phone records, the cell phone records from that night of those involved in addition to body cam footage. We want to know, is this shooting being treated differently because the bullet came from that of a fellow police officer as opposed to that of a civilian? If so, why? I have a strong feeling that had that shot been fired from a civilian's gun, we'd know a lot more answers right now. Release the full disciplinary file on this officer. We need to understand who he is, what his character was about, and what his conduct was like as a police officer. As far as we know, and what our investigation has found, and what's been corroborated by other news reports, there are 5 additional disciplinary investigations on him, including insubordination, meaning he wasn't a rule follower. So for that 2022 complaint that we talked about earlier about him flashing a gun at a woman and her date, we need to know, was the other man who was on that date with the woman, was he questioned? Why wasn't this officer who was on probation charged with a crime? Can you imagine going up to somebody in a restaurant, in a public place, flashing your gun, yelling epitaphs at them, and threatening them and not being charged with a crime. Why? Because he was a probationary officer? Why wasn't the man who was with the woman asked to file a complaint of aggravated assault against this officer? That would have cut him off right there, at least taken him off the department. And had he been convicted, he wouldn't be a police officer. And then you know where that story goes. None of us would be here today. Is there a criminal investigation underway for the June 5th shooting? If so, who's running it? If not, why isn't there one? We want to know the nature of the relationship between these officers, Krystal and the shooting officer, not only on duty, but also off duty. How long were they partners? Why were they partnered? And now, what does this all mean? Where does it take us? That shooting officer's personal lawyer said publicly that the focus should not be on second guessing each tactical decision that this officer made. I couldn't disagree more. That's exactly what we're here to do. We are here to examine every tactical decision that the officer made, but don't forget, we're backing up this timeline, not to June 5th, but 3 years before, to 2022, because he never should have been a police officer. Had he not been there, Krystal would be alive and none of this would be taking place today. We need to review and question every tactical decision made, not ignore them. We believe the warning signs were there for years, particularly with that domestic violence incident with him flashing a gun, and that he should have been criminally charged with aggravated assault and removed as a probationary officer. That was the time to do it. The definition of probation means that you're there for a test. You're there to see if you are fit for the duty that you are about to perform. And the duty that this man was about to perform was to carry a loaded gun on his duty belt, wear a badge and a shield, and say that I have the right to shoot and kill someone with deadly force if I'm justified. That's the task that he was given. He never should have been an officer. The death of Krystal Rivera never should have happened. In other licensed professions, this type of behavior in a probationary period would have been the end of that person's career. Can you imagine a medical student making all those mistakes? Even a barber who has to carry a license in a probationary period, making mistake after mistake. Would they be allowed to serve the public in that way? Low enrollment in the police ranks is not a reason to keep a person with red flags on the force. And very importantly, and think about this, today's July 2nd. This incident happened on June 5th. In about 2 to 3 days, his 30-day administrative period is going to expire. Have we heard whether or not he's going to be back on the streets policing with his loaded gun or not? He could be, but we don't have that answer yet, do we? And this takes us to our civil investigation, where we will be pursuing every avenue of civil justice that is available. The Illinois Pension Code tells us what we can and can't do in some regards, but we will use every state and federal avenue available to seek clarity and accountability and justice for Officer Krystal Rivera. So on behalf of our clients, the family of Krystal, we ask that Chicago Police Superintendent Larry Snelling immediately call for the Illinois State Police to open an independent investigation into Krystal's death and direct CPD to release all of the unedited body and dash camera footage of the deadly incident. We delivered this letter to Superintendent on June 27, 2025, asking for both of these critical steps. Further, we call for the full personnel and disciplinary file on the officer whose conduct ended Krystal's life. Transparency will reassure the family and the community that the department is committed to fully understanding what happened to Officer Rivera in those final moments. And if the city of Chicago is transparent and we learn the truth, we will accept what truth they give us, but we can't accept what we don't know. And we know that being a police officer in Chicago can be dangerous. We respect that. We acknowledge that. And we respect the brave officers who show up to work every day willing to take those risks for the community. We also expect our police officers to be heroes. There is no reason ever to keep or promote an officer with red flags on this police force. To relieve any appearance of impropriety, the investigation should be turned over to the independent outside agency. I strongly urge CPD to call for this independent investigation themselves. Release the body and dash camera footage, as well as for the superintendent to allow and address questions from you, the press. Time is of the essence here in doing the right thing for Krystal and all who loved her. And I also challenge you, the media, to ask these tough questions. We'll take whatever questions you have to ask us, but ask others. Don't just accept the narrative. There have been extensive coverage repeating CPD's narrative that this was an unintentional shooting. Well, that's what they're saying, that it was unintentional. But you need an intentional pull of the trigger to fire a gun. Let us see the shooting, the angles, the placement of the officers, and the suspects. I'd now like for you to hear from Krystal's family, and you're going to hear both from Yolanda and Rico. And Yolanda is going to say a few words now. And I thank you.
We are devastated by the unexpected loss of my daughter, Officer Krystal Rivera, who was tragically killed on June 5, 2025, while serving her community in Chicago. Krystal was a devoted mother to her 11-year-old daughter and a dedicated public servant. She graduated from Police Academy in 2021 and spent the last 4 years serving with pride and compassion in the 6th District Tech Team. She poured her heart into her work, always striving to make her city a better place. To me, Krystal was not just my daughter. She was my best friend, my confidant, and the light of my life. We spoke every single day. She was the one that I turned for comfort, for laughter, for strength. There wasn't a part of my world that didn't include her. And now, as empty as the words can feel, she's also loved taking long walks with me and her daughter. The quiet moments were full of laughter, connection, and peace. We took trips together. One of our favorite places was to Puerto Rico. She made sure that those times would stay in our hearts forever, just us girls. I hold on to those memories more than ever. And my granddaughter, she's like a daughter to me. I helped raise her while Krystal worked. I was there for school mornings, bedtime routines, and everything between. She carries her mother's strength and warmth. I will continue to love and guide her through this, just like Krystal would want it. I'm not just mourning my daughter. I'm mourning the warmth of those afternoons and the sound of her voice and the joy of her eyes when we were all together. She was the center, our heartbeat, and now everything feels so quiet without her. Krystal was admired by her fellow officers, respected by her community. She loved everyone truly who knew her. She led with kindness. She was a woman of character. Whether she was mentoring younger officers or simply brightening somebody's day, she always lifted up others. And as her mother, I'm asking for complete transparency. I need to understand what happened that night. I need to know the truth. Krystal believed in protecting and serving with honor. She will want her name. She will not want her name used in ways that brings division. If you're mourning for her, please honor her by staying grounded in peace. Let this moment be guided by truth, love, and justice. And we ask for privacy as we mourn, for the public to continue to support as we seek for answers and healing and justice. Thank you.
Good afternoon. On the night of June 5th, 2025, our lives were changed. Krystal lost her life, and a part of ours was lost as well. A light has gone out in our home, in our family, and in our lives. In moments like this, when the weight of grief feels unbearable, it is the love and support from our family, friends, colleagues, and community that helps hold us up. Losing Krystal has been an unspeakable tragedy, not only for our family, but for everyone who knew her, worked beside her, and that number is countless. She was a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a friend, and most importantly, a mother. Her courage, her heart, and her fierce dedication to standing up for others defined her both in and out of uniform. Krystal was the type of woman who would show up for you before you even knew you needed her. And she did it with strength, grace, and that signature fire in her spirit. Today, our deepest aches are for my wife, Krystal's two sisters, but mostly for our granddaughter. No parent expects, nor should they ever expect, to bury their child. And my wife is suffering not only from the loss of her baby girl, but it must also bear the weight that this is having on our granddaughter. To lose a loved one is heart wrenching in itself, but she must bear it while trying to help the granddaughter deal with her loss as well. Time fails me to speak of how this is having a family wide effect. I would like to thank Governor Pritzker, Mayor Johnson for their attendance at Krystal's funeral, Senator who entered it into the record, um, forgive me, in the congressional record. We'd like to thank also the distinguished officers of the Chicago Police Department and the people of Chicago for their outpouring of sympathy and support during this extremely difficult time. We are here asking both Mayor Johnson and Superintendent Snelling for full transparency. We believe in justice for Krystal and all parties involved in the incident, and that can only happen with the release of the body and dash cam footage along with an independent investigation by the Illinois State Police. We as a family need answers and believe the people of Chicago deserve them as well. We know for certain that Krystal deserves the best that this city, which she gave her life for, has to offer. We believe this is a small ask to the city given both her dedication to serving and protecting Chicago and the price she paid in the commission of that duty. And finally, we ask this great city to please honor Krystal's life by remaining peaceful and allowing the facts and the process to reach its conclusion. Krystal gave it all to make this city better, and it would be a dishonor to her memory to not exercise restraint at this time. Again, we want to thank everyone for your love, support, and prayers during this difficult time.
Thank you, Rico. You know, as you can see, what a profound effect Krystal has on her family, and even for us, for our legal team. We didn't know Krystal, obviously we did not know her, but we're all starting to feel like we did. I'll take questions.
Antonio, does the family suffer any type of animosity from the shooting officer toward Crystal?
We don't know that yet. We just wish we had more information. That's why we're asking for transparency on not only, you know, the relationship while they were police officers, but was there anything that we should know about that was relevant for them being off duty also? We don't know that yet.
Cook County judge has prohibited the body of suspects who are in custody related to her death. Do you guys have any plans to respond to that?
Well, I don't know if we can intervene on that, but certainly there are avenues available that can be withdrawn. It can be modified. And that's what we're hoping will happen. I mean, pardon me?
Judge who issued the order to do so.
I don't know that the judge sua sponte can modify that, but we know that Chicago Police Department has enough influence that if they asked for the filing party, the state's attorney, to offer a modification of it, could be done. So it depends on what they ask for.
Mr. Roman, you
Yes,
said
sir.
at the top of your statements that the family was allowed to see some video. What has the family shared with you that video showed?
Yeah.
Specifically? What have you all? What did they see?
So without going into detail, what I can tell you is that they did see the event. They saw the event in which the shot was fired, and I can tell you that if that event was as clear as what's being portrayed, we wouldn't be standing at this podium right now.
How many of the officers going to be back on duty? The other officer.
Well, we don't. That's the question. But we haven't heard anything. That's why his 30-day period expires very soon. And literally by Saturday, by Friday or Saturday, he could be back on the streets. Okay. He could be back on the streets patrolling. We want to know, is he going to be back on the streets or are they going to keep him on administrative duty? I think we need to know. That's fair. We're tax-paying citizens. We need to know whether he will be patrolling or whether he will be still on leave.
What was it on the video specifically that raised more questions and gave you answers? You said that repeatedly in your remarks.
Right. And that's something that I cannot specifically share because it's between myself and my clients. But I can tell you that there is a mismatch. There is not a correspondence, a corollary between this was let's put it this way. What's been reported is that somebody got in between the shooter and Krystal, right? Okay. That's something that we do not accept as accurate.
Mr. Roman, how unusual is
I promise I'll get to you. I heard Charlie first.
I'm sorry. How unusual a situation is this? Here it is a month into, so I sense the shooting. Usually, there's a lot more information. There's a requirement, I hope, at least to release video. We need to know more about what's happening. How unusual, in your experience, is this situation?
It is unusual because I posed the question that had this bullet come from a civilian's gun, we'd have a lot more answers. The narrative would be a lot clearer. We would know why charges were being filed, why it happened, how it happened, where they were standing. There'd be video that would be released, maybe some of it redacted or blurred out to protect other people, but at least we would know. And that's not happening here. And that's why we can't accept the smell test yet, because we're not getting what we should be getting if this had happened in a circumstance where a civilian had shot the gun. I'm sorry, who? I don't think so.
She mentioned that she spoke with her daughter every day. Now, did she ever say anything about this officer or have any complaints about this officer?
Yeah, I mean that's something that we can't answer today. No.
Well,
And are you planning to file a lawsuit against the city and the police department?
So as I said, we are looking at all of our civil avenues of justice, and I can tell you that we have some very viable avenues, despite this being a line of duty shooting. Um, we are very hopeful that our investigation and research takes us where we think we need to be. But in the meantime, I think it's fair that we get full accountability and transparency from CPD.
Tony, quick question. I'm sorry. What Liz said. I've heard you loud and clear saying that this guy should have never been an officer. There were clear warning signs. We know that apparently he had a disciplinary background. Has Miss Yolanda, and my apologies to the family for everything you are going through, have they shared with you, Tony, that he displayed some signs of aggression toward her? That she even complained to superiors, even if you can't go into specific
Yeah.
details. When you say there were clear warning signs, have your clients said to you, "Hey, um, Officer Rivera raised her hand and she was not acknowledged"? Can you give us a little bit of?
Yeah, I wish I could, because obviously you're asking for me to divulge conversations between my clients and myself. But here's what I can tell you. Just we don't need, hypothetically, we didn't need Krystal to have complained about him as a police officer or as somebody who was abusive or aggressive. He already showed that on the job. He already showed that on the job, not only by being insubordinate, by making false arrests, by flashing a gun in public. There were some other. There's not too many, but I can't remember all six of them. But those clearly, gosh, folks, those aren't even warning signs. Those are just career killers. Period. You're on probation. You flash a gun in public as a police officer. You're going to use your badge that early to intimidate and try and suppress someone's rights that early in your career. Should be a goner right there. There should even have been a discussion. Yes, sir.
Hi, Officer Rivera had cooperated in an investigation into the theft of a gun from police station.
Right.
Other cops were implicated. She told investigators that she had gone through her colleague's book bag to locate the gun. I'm wondering if knowing about that informed your skepticism of the police department at all, or your strategy in dealing with this new matter, and if you have any reason to believe that the two might be related.
Well, we don't know if the two are related yet, do we? We don't know, but we do know that Krystal was the one in that instance who was the prognosticator to find that stolen gun. She was the one who was out there hunting for it and to return it to where it should have been. Because what did that gun wind up doing then?
Yeah,
It ca-
a series of shootings.
yeah, it caused a lot of serious harm, didn't it? So again, we don't know if there's a relationship. I'm not here telling you that there is one, but that's why we need to know everything here. There is a lot here. There's not just one piece to this puzzle. There are so many pieces here, and we got to start fitting them together.
We'll take one more question.
Can you confirm how many minutes of the body cam footage the family was able to see, and of how much? And are you able to characterize the footage that they saw? Like, what was depicted on this footage that they were showed? Was it the part where Officer Rivera was shot? Was it? Can you give us some more details?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't get to view the whole gamut. They didn't see dash cam. They didn't see any other body cam other than, I believe it was the shooter and possibly Krystal's also. So it was just of that moment right there.
Thank you.
All right.
Anything in closing from you?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you all.